Imagine reaching the end of your life and discovering that you won every battle, but somehow lost the experience of being alive. You survived the criticism, you survived the betrayals, you survived the heartbreaks that changed the way you trusted people. You survived the responsibilities that forced you to grow up too quickly. You survived the sleepless nights when no one knew how much you were carrying. You survived every storm that was supposed to break you, and everyone admired your strength. They called you resilient, strong, responsible, the one who always finds a way. But no one asked what that strength cost you. No one noticed the moment you stopped laughing without guilt, the moment you stopped dreaming without fear, the moment you stopped resting without feeling like you had to earn it, the moment you stopped looking at sunsets because your mind was already worrying about tomorrow, the moment you stopped being present with the people you loved because survival had trained you to always prepare for the next disaster. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is not that life hurt you. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is that while learning how to survive pain, you forgot how to experience joy. The Vedas have whispered a truth for thousands of years. The deepest prison is not built by the world around you. It is built when fear convinces you that staying safe is more important than being fully alive. We begin to mistake our armor for our identity, our anxiety for wisdom, our exhaustion for purpose, our survival for life itself. But what if the person you miss the most is the version of you that existed before fear became your teacher? The version of you who laughed easily, who trusted naturally, who wondered at the stars, who believed life was something to experience, not something to endure. What if that person was never truly lost? What if they have been waiting beneath the fear, beneath the noise, beneath all the ways you learned to protect yourself? Tonight, this is not a story about becoming someone new. It is a story about remembering who you were before survival taught you to be afraid of living. Because before this life quietly slips through your hands, there is one question only you can answer. Have you truly been living, or have you only become incredibly good at surviving? The survival instinct that saved you became the prison that confined you. There was a time when your survival instinct was sacred. It was not your enemy. It was not a weakness. It was the part of you that refused to give up when life became too heavy to carry. It protected you when you did not know how else to protect yourself. It taught you how to adapt in situations you never should have had to face. The child who grew up around constant criticism learned to stay quiet because silence felt safer than being judged. The child who had to walk on eggshells learned to read every change in someone's tone of voice, every facial expression, every shift in mood, because predicting danger became necessary. The teenager who experienced rejection learned to expect less from people so disappointment would hurt a little less. The one who was laughed at stopped raising their hand. The one who was ignored stopped expressing their needs. The one who was compared to others started believing that being perfect was the only way to be accepted. The adult who was betrayed learned to trust cautiously. The person who loved deeply and lost someone important learned not to become attached too quickly. The one who had their heart broken convinced themselves they no longer needed anyone. These responses were intelligent. They were not flaws in your character. They were signs of your determination to survive. They were evidence that even in your darkest moments, some part of you fought to keep going. You became observant, responsible, independent, strong. You learned how to carry pain without showing it. You learned how to smile while your heart was exhausted. You learned how to function even when you were falling apart inside. And people admired you for it. They called you mature, resilient, reliable. But very few people ever stopped to ask what it cost you to become that version of yourself. Because survival always comes with a price. The problem begins when the strategies that once protected you become the only way you know how to live. The armor that once kept you safe slowly becomes impossible to remove. You no longer know when the danger has passed. You remain alert even in peaceful moments. You become uncomfortable when life becomes calm. You question kindness because you expect hidden motives. You struggle to trust people who genuinely care about you. You apologize for needing rest. You feel guilty for slowing down. You prepare for disasters that have not happened. You rehearse difficult conversations in your head. You imagine worst-case scenarios before allowing yourself to feel hope. You tell yourself that if you stay prepared, nothing can hurt you again. But preparation slowly becomes fear, and fear quietly becomes your identity. You stop asking yourself what brings you joy. Instead, you ask what feels safe. You stop choosing what excites your soul. Instead, you choose what minimizes risk. You stop taking chances. You stop dreaming boldly. You stop expressing your true thoughts because rejection feels unbearable. You stop opening your heart because vulnerability feels dangerous. Little by little, life becomes smaller, more controlled, more predictable. You begin existing inside carefully constructed routines designed to protect you from pain. Yet something inside you starts to feel empty, because a life built only around avoiding suffering eventually forgets how to experience beauty. The Vedic sages understood this truth thousands of years ago. They observed that fear narrows consciousness. It shrinks the vastness of who you are. The infinite possibilities of being alive collapse into a single exhausting mission. Avoid pain, avoid mistakes, avoid rejection, avoid uncertainty, avoid suffering at all costs. And without realizing it, you trade aliveness for safety. You become so focused on protecting your heart that you stop allowing it to experience wonder. You avoid risk, but you also avoid adventure. You avoid disappointment, but you also avoid deep connection. You avoid vulnerability, but you also avoid intimacy. You avoid uncertainty, but you also avoid the beautiful surprises that make life worth living. You survive birthdays without truly celebrating. You watch sunsets while thinking about tomorrow's responsibilities. You sit with people you love while your mind is somewhere else, preparing for problems that do not exist yet. You move through entire seasons of your life without fully arriving inside them. You wake up, you work, you worry, you sleep, and repeat, until one day, perhaps years later, a quiet question rises from somewhere deep within you. Is this all there is? Because the truth is, survival was never supposed to become your permanent home. It was meant to help you cross the storm. It was meant to carry you through the fire. It was meant to protect you until the danger passed. It was never meant to become the place where you built your entire identity. The deepest tragedy is not that you learned how to survive. The tragedy is that you became so good at surviving that you forgot there was another way to live. You forgot how to be playful without guilt, how to rest without earning it, how to trust without demanding guarantees, how to laugh without waiting for something bad to happen next, how to dream without immediately listing all the reasons it might fail, how to simply exist without constantly proving your worth. The Vedas gently remind us that fear is not our truest nature. Beneath all the armor, beneath all the coping mechanisms, beneath all the identities created by pain, there remains something untouched, a deeper self that remembers freedom, a deeper self that remembers joy, a deeper self that was never designed to live in permanent defense against life itself. You survived, and that survival deserves respect. It deserves compassion. It deserves gratitude, because there were moments when surviving was the bravest thing you could do, but perhaps that version of you has been carrying the burden long enough. Perhaps the battle ended years ago, but no one told your heart it was finally safe to rest. And perhaps the bravest thing you will ever do is not learning how to survive more. Perhaps the bravest thing you will ever do is slowly setting down the armor that once saved your life, to trust again, to hope again, to soften again, to step out from behind the walls you built in pain, to remember that life is not merely something to endure. It is something to participate in, something to taste, something to feel, something to love. Because the prison door has been open for a very long time, and maybe, just maybe, you are finally ready to walk through it. You spent your life earning a worth, that was never missing. One of the saddest things a human being can forget is this: you never had to earn the right to exist. You never had to prove that you deserved love. You never had to become extraordinary to be worthy of rest. And yet, many of us have spent our entire lives doing exactly that. Without realizing it, we entered into a silent agreement with the world. I will become who everyone needs me to be. I will make fewer mistakes. I will work harder than everyone else. I will carry more than my share. I will disappoint no one. I will ask for nothing. And maybe then I will finally deserve to be loved. Maybe then I will finally feel enough. For some people, this belief began in childhood. Perhaps you were praised only when you performed well. You received attention when you brought home good grades. You were celebrated when you achieved something impressive. You learned very early that being successful brought approval. Being useful brought affection. Being good brought acceptance. But simply being yourself, that did not seem to be enough. Perhaps you grew up hearing words like, "Why can't you be more like them? You should be grateful. Don't disappoint us. You need to do better. You can do more." Even if those words were spoken with good intentions, a young heart often translates them differently. It hears, "Who I am right now is not enough." So the child begins to perform, not because they are ambitious, but because they are afraid. Afraid of losing love, afraid of rejection, afraid of becoming invisible. Slowly, achievement stops being something you enjoy. It becomes something you depend on. You no longer chase success because it inspires you. You chase it because without it, you don't know who you are. You become the responsible one, the helper, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the overachiever, the person everyone admires because you always seem to have everything together. You answer messages immediately. You say yes when you want to say no. You show up for everyone else's emergencies. You become dependable, reliable, strong. And you not to become. You learn how to suppress your own exhaustion, because disappointing others feels unbearable. People praise your selflessness. They admire your dedication. They say things like, "I don't know how you do it. You're amazing. You never complain. You're so strong." And secretly, those compliments become fuel, because for a few moments they quiet the voice inside that whispers, "Maybe now I matter. Maybe now I am enough." But the relief never lasts, because no amount of achievement can heal a wound created by conditional worth. You reach one goal, then immediately set another. You solve one problem, then search for the next. You receive praise, then wonder how long it will take before people expect more. You become trapped in an endless cycle of proving your intelligence, proving your value, proving your goodness, proving your importance, proving that you deserve the space you occupy in this world. Even rest becomes something you believe must be earned. You tell yourself, "I can relax after I finish this. I can take care of myself after everyone else is okay. I can slow down when I've done enough." But enough never arrives, because the standard keeps moving. You become exhausted trying to reach a finish line that does not exist. And perhaps this is why so many people feel empty even after achieving everything they once dreamed of. They built their identity around becoming worthy, only to discover that the feeling they were chasing was never hidden inside accomplishment. The Vedic sages understood this deeply. They taught that beneath all the roles we play, there exists something whole and complete. The deepest self does not become more valuable because of success, nor does it become less valuable because of failure. It simply is. Think about nature for a moment. The sun rises every morning. It never asks if it deserves to shine. The moon illuminates the night sky without questioning its worth. A tree does not compare itself to the forest beside it. A river does not apologize because it flows at its own pace. A flower blooms when its season arrives. It does not earn its beauty. It expresses it. Existence itself is enough. And somehow, human beings are the only creatures who spend years convincing themselves otherwise. We apologize for resting. We feel guilty for setting boundaries. We diminish our achievements. We overextend ourselves trying to secure love. We abandon our own needs to avoid disappointing others. We exhaust ourselves trying to justify our presence. But what if the voice telling you that you are not enough was never telling the truth? What if you have been carrying a burden that was never yours to carry? What if you stopped measuring your worth by your productivity, by your appearance, by your relationship status, by how useful you are to other people, by how much you sacrifice, by how perfectly you perform? What would remain? The Vedas whisper an answer that can feel both frightening and liberating. You would remain, not the identity you built to survive, not the mask designed to gain approval, not the version of yourself constantly seeking validation. You, the awareness beneath the striving, the presence beneath the performance, the self that existed before anyone taught you that love had to be earned, before report cards, before heartbreak, before comparisons, before criticism. Before you learned to seek permission to take up space, you were never born believing you had to prove your worth. No newborn enters this world apologizing for existing. No child laughs freely because they have earned the right to joy. They laugh because joy is natural. They cry because honesty is natural. They rest because rest is natural. Only later does the world teach us conditions. Be better, be quieter, be stronger, be more successful, be easier to love. And eventually, we forget that we were already enough before those conditions were ever introduced. Perhaps the deepest healing is not becoming more impressive. Perhaps it is remembering what was true before the world convinced you otherwise. You do not have to earn rest. You do not have to earn compassion. You do not have to earn belonging. You do not have to earn love. And you certainly do not have to earn the right to exist. Your worth was never hiding in your achievements. It was never waiting at the end of perfection. It was never locked behind someone else's approval. It has been with you from the very beginning, quiet, unchanging, untouched by success, untouched by failure, untouched by the opinions of others. You may have forgotten it, but forgetting is not the same as losing. The sky remains whole even when hidden by clouds. The ocean remains deep even during storms, and your worth remains intact even after years of doubting it. Perhaps the most radical thing you can do is stop asking, "What must I do to become enough?" and begin asking, "What would my life look like if I truly believed that I already am?" Because maybe the freedom you have been searching for does not come from becoming someone greater. Maybe it begins the moment you stop trying to earn what your soul has carried since the day you were born. The simple truth that no fear, failure, rejection, or mistake has ever been able to erase. You were worthy before you proved anything, and you remain worthy still. You lived in survival so long that peace began to feel dangerous. There is a strange thing that happens to people who have spent a long time surviving. They finally arrive at a moment they once prayed for, and they cannot relax enough to enjoy it. The problem is not that peace never came. The problem is that when peace arrived, it felt unfamiliar. And what is unfamiliar often feels unsafe. Maybe life is finally becoming stable. The bills are paid. The people around you are kind. No one is arguing. No crisis is unfolding. Nothing terrible is happening. And yet, instead of feeling grateful, your mind starts searching for what could go wrong. You think to yourself, "This is too good to last. Something bad is about to happen. I should prepare myself. I should not get too comfortable. I should not get my hopes up. I should not trust this feeling." Without realizing it, you begin waiting for the storm, not because it is coming, but because storms have become familiar. If chaos was your normal environment for years, peace can feel unnatural. The child who grew up in a home filled with tension learned that silence meant something bad was about to happen. The teenager who constantly faced criticism learned to expect disappointment before trying. The person who experienced betrayal learned to question every act of kindness. The one who lost someone they deeply loved learned not to celebrate too much because life can change overnight. The person who has been abandoned learns not to become too attached. The one who has experienced repeated heartbreak learns to look for signs that people will eventually leave. These responses are not irrational. They are the echoes of old pain. Your mind is trying to protect you. Your body is trying to protect you. Your heart is trying to make sure you never suffer the same way again. But there is a hidden cost to living this way. You stop experiencing life as it is. You experience life through anticipation. You stop being present. You become a constant observer of danger, even during beautiful moments. You go on vacation but cannot stop checking your phone. You sit at dinner with people you love while worrying about future problems. You receive good news and immediately think about what could ruin it. You fall in love and secretly prepare yourself for the ending. You achieve something meaningful and immediately fear losing it. You hear someone say they care about you, and instead of receiving it fully, part of you wonders how long it will last. You smile, but you remain guarded. You celebrate, but only halfway. You hope, but cautiously, because somewhere inside you, survival whispers, do not relax, do not trust, do not believe this will stay. Do not put your heart here. Stay alert, stay prepared, stay ready, and slowly something heartbreaking begins to happen. You become unable to receive the very thing you have spent your whole life longing for. Peace arrives, but you cannot rest. Love arrives, but you cannot trust. Joy arrives, but you cannot surrender to it. Safety arrives, but your nervous system does not recognize it. You keep living as though the emergency never ended. The Vedic sages understood this aspect of human suffering deeply. They observed that the mind becomes conditioned by repetition. Whatever we experience repeatedly begins to shape our perception of reality. If fear is repeated often enough, fear becomes familiar. If anxiety becomes familiar, calm feels suspicious. If struggle becomes identity, ease can feel undeserved. And so consciousness remains trapped inside old patterns long after external circumstances have changed. You leave the battlefield, but the battlefield never leaves you. You escape the storm, but part of your mind continues carrying the rain. You survive the fire, but your body still smells smoke where none exists. You become like a traveler who finally reaches home but keeps sleeping with one eye open. Because peace requires a kind of courage that survival never taught you. It requires trust, not certainty. Trust, and those two things are very different. Certainty says, nothing painful will ever happen again. Trust says, pain may come, but I believe I can meet it. Certainty says, guarantee my future before I relax. Trust says, I do not know what tomorrow holds, but I do not want fear to steal today. Certainty says, protect yourself from everything. Trust says, open your heart to life, even knowing that life changes. The Vedas never promise a life without loss. They never promise that suffering will disappear forever. Instead, they invite us into a different relationship with existence, one rooted in presence. Because the truth is, life has always been uncertain. It was uncertain when you were born. It is uncertain now. It will remain uncertain tomorrow. But uncertainty was never the enemy. The enemy was forgetting how to live because uncertainty exists. How many beautiful moments have you only half experienced because fear was rehearsing tomorrow? How many sunsets passed unnoticed because your mind was trapped inside future worries? How many conversations ended before they truly began because you were too busy protecting yourself? How many times has your body been safe while your mind insisted you were in danger? How many people have loved you while you struggled to believe them? How many blessings entered your life while you remained emotionally prepared for loss? Perhaps the greatest theft of survival is not what happened to you in the past. Perhaps it is how much of the present it continues to steal. Because peace is not only the absence of conflict. Peace is the ability to fully arrive in the moment you are living, to taste your food, to hear laughter without waiting for bad news, to walk beneath the evening sky without carrying tomorrow on your shoulders, to allow yourself to enjoy something beautiful without immediately grieving its ending, to let your heart say, this moment is enough. The Vedas gently remind us that awareness belongs here, not in the imagined disasters of the future, not in the regrets of the past, Here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this ordinary moment that will never come again. The tea growing cold beside you, the sound of rain against the window, the face of someone you love, the feeling of sunlight touching your skin, the quiet miracle of being alive at all. Perhaps peace does not arrive all at once. Perhaps it returns in small moments. The first time you laugh without guilt. The first night you sleep without replaying every mistake. The first time you stop apologizing for resting. The first time you believe that calm is not a trick. The first time you realize that not every silence hides danger. The first time you allow yourself to hope without immediately preparing for disappointment. These moments may seem small, but they are sacred because they mark the beginning of something survival forgot to teach you: how to receive life instead of defending yourself against it. You spent years learning how to endure storms. Honor that. Respect that version of yourself. They protected you when protection was necessary. But perhaps the storm has passed. Perhaps the war ended long ago. Perhaps your heart has been standing guard outside an empty battlefield. And maybe the next chapter of your life is not about becoming stronger. Maybe it is about becoming softer, not weak. Soft enough to trust a peaceful moment. Soft enough to believe that joy is not a trap. Soft enough to rest without fear. Soft enough to stop expecting disaster from every beautiful thing life places in your hands. Because peace is not dangerous. Love is not dangerous. Rest is not dangerous. The present moment is not dangerous. And maybe the greatest act of healing is this: to slowly teach your heart that it no longer has to survive every second of its existence. To whisper to yourself, again and again, you are safe enough to be here, safe enough to breathe, safe enough to hope, safe enough to live, and perhaps, for the first time in a very long while, safe enough to experience peace without waiting for it to disappear. You called it strength when you were actually learning how not to feel. There comes a moment in many people's lives when feeling everything becomes too painful. The heart becomes tired. The mind becomes overwhelmed. The soul becomes exhausted from carrying more than it knows how to hold. And without making a conscious decision, you begin to shut parts of yourself down, not because you want to become cold, not because you no longer care, but because caring started to hurt too much. At first, it happens quietly. You tell yourself you are just being practical. You stop talking about what is bothering you. You stop crying in front of people. You stop asking for help. You stop admitting when something hurts. You stop expecting others to understand. You stop sharing your disappointments. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal. I'll be fine. I don't need anyone. I can handle it. And maybe you can. Maybe you have handled things that would have broken other people. Maybe you kept showing up when your world was falling apart. Maybe you smiled at work while grieving inside. Maybe you comforted other people while no one noticed that you needed comfort too. Maybe you became the strong one because life gave you no other choice. People admired that version of you. They said you were mature, resilient, independent, level-headed. They praised your ability to stay calm under pressure. They admired how you never seemed overwhelmed, how you always knew what to do, how you rarely complained, how you carried everyone's burdens without asking for anything in return. And slowly you began believing that strength meant never falling apart. Strength meant staying composed. Strength meant being needed but never needy. Strength meant carrying pain in silence. Strength meant never letting anyone see the cracks. So you became excellent at functioning. You got up every morning. You completed your responsibilities. You answered messages. You paid the bills. You attended family gatherings. You smiled in photographs. You laughed at the right moments. You said, I'm okay, even when you weren't, especially when you weren't. From the outside, your life looked normal, but inside, something important was disappearing, because surviving by shutting down your emotions comes with a hidden cost. You do not only numb pain, you numb joy. You do not only silence grief, you silence wonder. You do not only avoid heartbreak, you avoid intimacy. You do not only stop feeling fear, you stop feeling excitement. You become disconnected from your own aliveness, Days begin blending together. Food loses its taste. Music no longer moves you the way it once did. The things you used to love become tasks to complete. You stop noticing beauty. You stop noticing yourself. And perhaps the saddest part is this: you become so accustomed to emotional distance that you mistake it for healing. You tell yourself, "I've moved on. I don't care anymore. It doesn't affect me." But deep down, there is a difference between peace and numbness. Peace feels open. Numbness feels closed. Peace feels alive. Numbness feels empty. Peace allows emotions to move through you without controlling you. Numbness locks emotions away because they feel too dangerous to face. The Vedic sages understood that human suffering is not solved by becoming less human. It is not solved by disconnecting from experience. It is not solved by turning the heart into stone. The Vedas never teach escape from life. They teach presence within life. To witness sorrow without becoming sorrow. To witness joy without clinging to it. To witness anger without being consumed by it. To witness love without trying to possess it. The goal was never to stop feeling. The goal was to stop drowning. There is a profound difference between those two things. Many people who believe they have become strong have actually become guarded. Many people who believe they have healed have simply learned how to avoid. Many people who call themselves independent have hearts that are terrified of needing anyone. Many people who pride themselves on being unaffected are simply exhausted from years of carrying pain alone, because pain has a way of teaching harsh lessons. If you loved deeply and were betrayed, you may decide never to trust again. If you opened your heart and were rejected, you may decide vulnerability is weakness. If you expressed your emotions and were mocked, you may decide silence is safer. If you needed support and no one came, you may decide needing others is dangerous. Little by little, you build walls, not because you hate people, but because you are trying to protect the parts of yourself that were wounded, and those walls work. They keep disappointment out. They reduce risk. They minimize uncertainty, but they also keep tenderness out. They keep connection out. They keep love out. They keep life out. The tragedy is not that you built the walls. The tragedy is forgetting that they were meant to be temporary. The child inside you built them to survive. The adult inside you still lives behind them. The Vedas remind us that beneath all fear, beneath all protection, beneath all the identities created by suffering, there remains an awareness untouched by experience, an awareness capable of witnessing every emotion without being destroyed by it. Because emotions were never enemies, sadness teaches us what mattered. Grief teaches us how deeply we loved. Fear reminds us what we value. Compassion connects us to others. Joy reminds us that life is still beautiful. Even longing has something sacred within it. It reminds us that the heart was created to reach beyond itself. The answer was never to stop feeling. The answer was to learn that feelings are visitors. They arrive, they stay for a while, then they leave, like seasons, like waves, like passing weather across an endless sky. The sky never resists the storm. It does not panic when clouds appear. It allows them to move through, and perhaps this is the strength the Vedas were pointing toward all along. Not the strength that hardens, but the strength that softens without breaking, the strength that cries and still continues, the strength that admits, "I am hurting," the strength that says, "I need help," the strength that remains loving after disappointment, the strength that stays open after loss, the strength that chooses honesty over performance. Because true strength has never been the absence of tears. It has never been pretending that nothing affects you. It has never been becoming untouchable. True strength is having the courage to remain human in a world that constantly teaches you to shut down. It is allowing yourself to laugh freely again, to feel gratitude without suspicion, to be moved by a song, to sit quietly beneath the evening sky and let beauty reach you, to miss someone and still move forward, to grieve without believing life is over, to love without demanding guarantees, to experience joy without fearing that it will disappear. You do not have to become cold to survive. You do not have to become distant to be wise. You do not have to abandon your heart to protect it. The version of you that stopped feeling was not weak. That version was trying to save your life. Honor them. Thank them. They carried you through impossible seasons. They helped you endure nights no one else knew about. They kept you moving when stopping felt unbearable. But perhaps they have been protecting you for long enough. Perhaps the danger has passed. Perhaps the walls no longer serve the person you are becoming. And perhaps healing is not about becoming stronger than your emotions. Perhaps healing is learning to trust that your heart can feel deeply without falling apart. Because the deepest truth the Vedas whisper is this: you were never meant to merely function. You were never meant to become a machine that performs and produces while secretly disappearing inside. You were meant to experience this mysterious gift called life, to cry when your heart aches, to laugh until your stomach hurts, to stand in awe beneath a sky full of stars, to love people while they are here, to grieve when they are gone, to feel everything that makes you human, because the heart that risks being broken is also the heart capable of wonder. And maybe the strongest thing you will ever do is not proving that nothing can hurt you. Maybe the strongest thing you will ever do is opening your heart again and allowing yourself to truly feel alive. You kept postponing life while waiting to become ready to live it. There is a quiet lie that follows many people throughout their entire lives. It does not arrive dramatically. It does not announce itself as fear. In fact, it often sounds reasonable, responsible even. It whispers, "Amisas moi, not yet." You tell yourself that life will begin later, after this stressful season, after you save more money, after you lose the weight, after you find the right relationship, after the children grow older, after you heal completely, after you become more confident, after you finally figure everything out. Then I will rest. Then I will travel. Then I will pursue what I truly love. Then I will start living. At first it feels harmless. It feels wise to prepare, wise to wait, wise to become ready. But slowly, almost without noticing, waiting becomes a way of life. You postpone joy. You postpone peace. You postpone presence. You postpone yourself. You stop seeing life as something happening now. Instead, you begin treating it like a destination somewhere in the future, somewhere just beyond your reach. You convince yourself that the real version of your life has not started yet, that this chapter is simply preparation, that these years do not count, that once certain conditions are met, everything will finally begin. But the strange thing about life is this: it never announces its arrival. There is no grand moment when trumpets sound and a voice says, "Congratulations, you are now allowed to live." Life does not begin after the struggle ends. Because struggle has a way of changing its shape. One problem is solved, another appears. One responsibility disappears, another takes its place. One fear fades, another emerges. The finish line keeps moving. And if your happiness depends upon reaching a future where nothing is difficult, you may spend your entire existence waiting for a day that never comes. How many people have said, "I'll spend more time with my family when work slows down. I'll enjoy life after retirement. I'll take care of my health next year. I'll pursue my dream when I have more time. I'll tell them I love them tomorrow. I'll take that trip someday. I'll start painting again someday. I'll learn to play music someday. I'll forgive myself someday. I'll be happy someday." And then suddenly, years have passed. The children have grown up. Parents have grown older. Friendships have faded. The body has changed. Entire seasons have disappeared into memory. And the person who kept saying later realizes they postponed things that mattered most, because life was happening while they were waiting for permission to live it. The Vedic sages understood this deeply. They recognized one of the mind's most powerful illusions, the illusion that fulfillment exists somewhere else, somewhere ahead, somewhere beyond this moment. The mind says, "If I can just get there, then I'll be at peace." But there is a moving target. The moment you arrive, the mind creates another destination, another requirement, another reason why now is still not enough. You graduate, then you need a career. You build a career, then you need more success. You achieve success, then you need security. You find security, then you worry about maintaining it. The search never ends because the problem was never outside of you. The mind had become addicted to postponement. It had forgotten how to arrive. Think back for a moment. Remember all the ordinary moments that became precious only after they were gone. A conversation with someone who is no longer here. A family dinner you barely paid attention to. A walk you rushed through. A hug you assumed would happen again. A season of youth you thought would last forever. You did not know those moments were sacred because you believed life was somewhere else. But life was there, quietly unfolding, in the ordinary, in the unnoticed, in the simple moments you thought were insignificant. The Vedas gently remind us that reality only exists here, not in the imagined future, not in the replayed past. Here, this breath, this heartbeat, this sunrise, this cup of tea growing cold beside you, this familiar voice calling your name, this evening sky painted in colors you almost forgot to notice. This exact moment, the present, is the only place where life can ever touch you. Yet many people are physically present while mentally absent. Their bodies sit at the dinner table while their minds are trapped inside tomorrow. Their loved ones speak while they rehearse future problems. Their children laugh while they scroll through worries. Their eyes look forward while their souls remain somewhere else. They are alive, but they are not here. Survival taught you to focus on what comes next. It taught you to prepare, to anticipate, to fix, to improve, and those abilities have their place. But survival rarely teaches you how to simply be. To watch rain fall without rushing, to sit beneath a tree without checking the time, to listen without planning your response, to laugh without wondering when the happiness will end, to eat slowly enough to taste your food, to look at someone you love and truly see them, to notice that this ordinary day is not ordinary at all, because one day it too will become a memory. The tragedy is not that life is short. The tragedy is how often we miss it while waiting for something else. The Vedic understanding does not ask you to abandon responsibility. It does not ask you to stop planning for tomorrow. It simply asks a deeper question. Can you live while planning? Can you work without postponing wonder? Can you prepare for the future without sacrificing the present? Can you remember that this moment matters too? Perhaps healing begins when you stop dividing your life into categories of real life and temporary life. This is your life, the difficult seasons, the joyful seasons, the confusing seasons, the ordinary afternoons, the mornings when you feel inspired, the evenings when you feel uncertain, the moments of clarity, the moments of doubt. It all counts. None of it is rehearsal. None of it is merely preparation. This conversation, this breath, this chapter of your journey, it matters. There is a story many people never realize they are living. A story that says, I will start being kind to myself when I become better. I will rest when I have earned it. I will pursue what I love when I am more qualified. I will forgive myself when I become perfect. I will live when I am ready. But perhaps you were never meant to become perfectly ready. Perhaps readiness itself is a myth. Perhaps courage is beginning before certainty arrives. Perhaps wisdom is allowing yourself to participate in life exactly as you are. Messy, imperfect, still healing, still learning, still growing. Because if you wait until fear disappears, you may wait forever. If you wait until you have all the answers, life will keep moving without you. If you wait until you become someone else, you may never discover the beauty of being who you already are. The Vedas whisper a truth both simple and profound. Existence is happening now, not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, not when you become worthy. Now, the laughter you hear today, the people sitting beside you today, the opportunities before you today, the sky above you today, the beating of your own heart today. This is life. And perhaps the greatest regret is not making mistakes. Perhaps the greatest regret is realizing too late that you were waiting for permission to embrace a life that had already begun. One day, You will look back on this season. You will remember the worries that consumed you, the goals you chased, the fears that felt so important, and many of them will no longer matter. But you may remember the warmth of sunlight through a window, the sound of someone's laughter, the comfort of familiar routines, the unexpected kindness of strangers, the ordinary moments you finally slowed down enough to notice. Those moments were never interruptions to life. They were life. So stop asking yourself when you will finally begin living. Stop waiting for a future version of yourself to grant permission. Stop postponing joy until circumstances become perfect. Because perfection was never the requirement, presence was. You do not have to earn this moment. You only have to arrive in it. And perhaps the most powerful decision you can make is this: to stop treating your life like a waiting room, to stop believing that the best part is somewhere else, to stop postponing your own existence, and instead, with all your imperfections and uncertainties, to gently whisper to yourself, this day matters, this moment counts, I am already here, because the life you keep waiting for has been waiting for you all along. Your need to control everything was fear asking for guarantees. There is a form of fear that rarely looks like fear. It does not always appear as panic. It does not always show itself through trembling hands or sleepless nights. In fact, people often praise it. They call it responsibility, discipline, preparedness, being organized, being practical, being someone who has everything under control. And perhaps you have spent years becoming exactly that person, the one who thinks 5 steps ahead, the one who anticipates problems before they happen, the one who prepares for every possible outcome, the one who carries backup plans for the backup plans, the one everyone depends on because you never seem caught off guard. From the outside, it looks like wisdom, but deep inside, there is often a quieter truth. You are tired, because carrying the weight of controlling everything is exhausting. You tell yourself, if I plan enough, nothing will go wrong. If I prepare for every possibility, I won't get hurt. If I stay alert, I won't be disappointed. If I can predict what people will do, they won't surprise me. If I manage everything perfectly, I can finally relax. But that moment of relaxation never arrives, because life keeps reminding you of something you desperately wish were not true. You cannot control everything. You cannot control who stays. You cannot control who leaves. You cannot control how people see you. You cannot control the timing of every blessing. You cannot control the economy, the weather, the aging of your parents, the choices of your children, the thoughts inside another person's mind. You cannot control illness. You cannot control loss. You cannot control whether someone understands the love you tried to give them. And perhaps this truth terrifies us because deep down we have confused control with safety. For many people, this pattern began long ago. Maybe life felt unpredictable. Maybe adults around you were inconsistent. Maybe chaos entered your home without warning. Maybe promises were broken. Maybe the people who were supposed to protect you could not. When the world felt uncertain, you made a silent decision. I will never be caught unprepared again. I will think ahead. I will notice everything. I will fix every problem before it grows. I will carry the responsibility. I will become the person who prevents disaster. And in many ways, this strategy worked. It helped you survive. It helped you build a stable life. It made you dependable. People admired your strength. They praised how capable you were. They said things like, "You always have it together. You think of everything. I don't know what we'd do without you." And slowly, control became part of your identity. But there was a hidden cost, because when control becomes your source of safety, uncertainty becomes unbearable. You struggle to enjoy surprises. You overanalyze conversations. You replay situations in your mind searching for mistakes. You prepare for arguments that never happen. You rehearse future disasters. You struggle to delegate because trusting others feels risky. You take responsibility for problems that were never yours to solve. You try to carry everyone. You try to protect everyone. You try to fix everyone. And eventually, you become exhausted by a burden no human being was ever meant to carry. Because the truth is this: control is often fear, asking for guarantees that life was never designed to give. Fear says, "Tell me exactly how this relationship will end before I open my heart." Fear says, "Promise me I won't fail before I chase my dream." Fear says, "Show me that nothing painful will happen before I trust this moment." Fear says, "Guarantee the future before I allow myself peace." But life remains silent, because life has never offered guarantees. The Vedic sages understood this deeply. They saw that much of human suffering comes not from uncertainty itself, but from our resistance to it. We demand permanence from a changing world. We demand certainty from an unfolding mystery. We demand control over a reality that is constantly moving. And when reality refuses to obey us, we suffer. Not because life betrayed us, but because we expected it to become something it could never be. The Vedas teach surrender, and surrender is one of the most misunderstood words in the human experience. Many people hear surrender and imagine weakness, giving up, becoming passive, accepting defeat. But true surrender is none of those things. Surrender is not saying, "I don't care." Surrender says, "I care deeply, but I release my need to control the outcome." Surrender is not refusing to act. It is acting wholeheartedly without trying to possess the future. Surrender is doing your best, while accepting that life remains larger than your plans. It is planting seeds without demanding the exact day they will bloom. It is loving someone while accepting that you cannot control their choices. It is preparing wisely while understanding that uncertainty still exists. It is participating fully in life without trying to dominate it. The river offers a beautiful lesson. A river does not reach the ocean because it controls every turn. It bends, it adapts, it flows around obstacles. Sometimes it moves gently, sometimes it rushes with force, but it continues. It trusts the movement, and eventually it arrives. Perhaps wisdom is less about controlling life and more about learning how to move with it. Think of how much energy fear has stolen from you. How many nights have you stayed awake trying to solve tomorrow before tomorrow arrived? How many conversations have you replayed? How many imaginary disasters have you survived inside your mind? How many moments of beauty have you missed because you were busy preparing for pain? How many opportunities did you decline because there was no guarantee? How many times did you postpone joy until certainty arrived? And how many times did certainty actually come? Almost never, because certainty was never the gift life offered. Presence was, courage was, trust was. You do not need to know exactly how everything will unfold to take the next step. You do not need guarantees to love. You do not need certainty to dream. You do not need perfect conditions to begin again. The Vedas gently remind us that beneath the illusion of control lies something far more powerful. Trust in the deeper intelligence of life itself. Trust that you have survived difficult seasons before. Trust that you can adapt. Trust that wisdom will arise when needed. Trust that uncertainty is not evidence that something is wrong. Trust that you are stronger than the fear demanding absolute answers. There is a profound freedom that arrives when you stop fighting reality. You breathe more deeply. You laugh more freely. You become present enough to enjoy what is here. Instead of obsessing over what might happen, you stop gripping life so tightly. And finally, you begin to live it. This does not mean you stop planning. It does not mean you become careless. It means you stop worshipping control as if it can save you, because no amount of control can prevent every heartbreak. No amount of preparation can remove every loss. No amount of overthinking can guarantee safety. And perhaps that was never your responsibility. Perhaps your responsibility was simpler: to love while you can, to rest when you need to prepare wisely, and then let go, to show up fully for the life unfolding before you, to trust that even when things do not go according to plan, you will find your way through. You always have. The version of you that tried to control everything was not broken. That version was trying to protect you. Honor them. Thank them. They carried enormous responsibility. They did what they believed was necessary to keep you safe. But perhaps they have been standing guard for too long. Perhaps the future does not need to be conquered. Perhaps it only needs to be met. One breath at a time, one day at a time, one uncertain step at a time. And maybe the deepest peace the Vedas invite us into is this: you do not have to hold the entire universe together. You do not have to predict every storm. You do not have to earn tomorrow by sacrificing today. You only have to meet this moment with an open heart. Do what you can. Release what you cannot. Trust what you cannot yet see, because life was never asking you to control everything. It was asking you to participate, to flow, to trust, to surrender, and to discover that sometimes the safest place you can finally rest is not in certainty, but in the quiet realization that you no longer need it. The voice that taught you to fear life was never who you truly are. There is a voice that has been speaking inside your mind for so long that you may have stopped questioning it. You hear it when you wake up in the morning. You hear it before making important decisions. You hear it when you look in the mirror. You hear it when you lie awake at night, replaying conversations that ended hours ago. It comments on everything. It judges. It predicts. It warns. It criticizes. It compares. It doubts. And because it has been with you for most of your life, you may have come to believe one simple thing: this voice is me. But what if it isn't? What if the loudest voice inside your head is not your deepest truth? What if the part of you that constantly worries, criticizes, and fears is not your identity, but merely a frightened protector trying to keep you safe? For many people, this voice began forming in childhood. Perhaps it sounded like the criticism you heard growing up. Don't embarrass yourself. You're not good enough. You should have done better. What will people think? Why can't you be more like everyone else? Maybe it absorbed the words of teachers, family members, friends, or strangers. Maybe it learned through painful experiences. You trusted someone, and they betrayed you. You took a risk and failed. You opened your heart and were rejected. You expressed yourself and were misunderstood. And slowly the mind reached a conclusion: never let that happen again. So the voice became louder. Be careful. Don't trust too easily. Don't stand out. Don't hope too much. Don't dream too big. Don't speak unless you're certain. Don't make mistakes. Stay small. Stay hidden. Stay safe. At first, this voice was trying to help you. It believed fear would protect you. It believed criticism would motivate you. It believed self-doubt would prevent disappointment. It believed anxiety would prepare you for danger. It believed overthinking would stop you from making the wrong choices. It believed that if it constantly pointed out your weaknesses, no one else could hurt you first. And perhaps that voice carried you through difficult seasons. Perhaps it helped you survive environments where mistakes had consequences. Perhaps it protected you when you genuinely needed protection. But the problem begins when a voice designed to help you survive starts narrating your entire existence, because eventually you stop hearing it as advice. You hear it as truth. The voice says, you're behind in life, and you believe it. It says, you'll probably fail, and you believe it. It says, you're difficult to love, and you believe it. It says, everyone else has it figured out except you, and you believe it. It says, you can't trust people. You'll never change. You'll never be enough. You'll never heal. You'll never find peace. And because the voice sounds familiar, you rarely question whether it is telling the truth. You simply obey. How many opportunities have you walked away from because of this voice? How many dreams have you abandoned? How many relationships have you sabotaged? How many moments of joy have you dimmed because the voice warned you not to trust them? How many versions of yourself have you buried because the voice convinced you they were too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too ambitious, too strange, too broken, too late? The Vedic sages explored this mystery thousands of years ago. They noticed something extraordinary. The mind is constantly changing. Thoughts appear, thoughts disappear. Emotions rise, emotions fall. Memories come and go. Identities evolve. Fear arrives. Fear leaves. Yet something remains unchanged beneath all of it. Something notices. Something witnesses. Something is aware of every thought without becoming the thought itself. And this realization changes everything. Because if you can observe the voice, then the voice cannot be who you truly are. Think about it. You can hear the thought, "I am afraid," which means there is an awareness noticing fear. You can notice self-doubt, which means there is an awareness greater than doubt. You can observe sadness, which means there is an awareness untouched by sadness. The Vedas call attention to this witnessing presence, the silent awareness beneath the noise, the part of you that existed before the world taught you who to become. Before labels, before expectations, before achievements, before failures, before fear, the sky remains the sky regardless of what weather passes through it. Storms do not destroy its vastness. Clouds do not diminish its openness. Thunder does not change its nature. Likewise, your awareness remains untouched by the thoughts moving through it. You are not every fearful sentence your mind repeats. You are not every insecurity you inherited. You are not every criticism you absorbed. You are not every painful story you've been telling yourself. You are not the voice that says, "You'll never be enough." You are the one who hears it. You are not the voice that says, "You're running out of time." You are the one aware of its urgency. You are not the voice that predicts disaster. You are the one noticing its fear. And perhaps, for the first time, this realization offers a profound sense of freedom, because if you are not the voice, then you do not have to obey everything it says. You can thank it for trying to protect you and still choose differently. The voice says, "Don't try," and awareness says, "I understand you're afraid, but I'm taking the step anyway." The voice says, "Don't trust," and awareness says, "I know you've been hurt, but I refuse to let fear decide everything." The voice says, "You'll fail," and awareness says, "Failure is part of being human, not proof that I should stop living." The voice says, "You are not enough," and awareness says, "I no longer measure my worth through fear." This does not mean the voice disappears. The Vedas never promise a perfectly silent mind. Thoughts will continue to arise. Fear may still visit. Doubt may still whisper. Old wounds may still ache. The difference is that you stop building your identity around them. You stop treating every thought like a command. You stop assuming every fear is prophecy. You stop confusing familiarity with truth, because the mind often repeats what it has practiced, not what is real. If fear was repeated for years, fear becomes automatic. If criticism was repeated for years, criticism becomes internalized. But repetition does not transform a lie into truth. A thought repeated 1,000 times is still just a thought. And perhaps the deepest tragedy of survival is not the pain you experienced. Perhaps it is how thoroughly you began identifying with the frightened voice that developed because of that pain. You forgot that fear was an experience, not an identity. You forgot that anxiety was a visitor, not your essence. You forgot that the critic inside your head was learned, not innate. You forgot that before all the conditioning, you simply existed, curious, present, open, alive. The Vedas gently remind us that what you truly are cannot be damaged by passing thoughts. It cannot be improved by praise. It cannot be diminished by criticism. It cannot be destroyed by failure. It is the quiet awareness beneath all experience, still, spacious, unchanging. And maybe healing begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I silence this voice forever?" and begin asking, "Who is the one listening?" Because perhaps you have spent your entire life trying to fix the wrong self, trying to improve the frightened voice, trying to perfect the anxious identity, trying to earn peace through endless self-correction, when all along, peace was waiting beneath the noise, patiently, quietly, like the sky waiting behind the clouds. You survived because a fearful voice tried to protect you. Honor that voice. It helped you through seasons you never expected to survive. It carried lessons born from pain. It wanted to keep you safe, but it was never meant to become your ruler. It was never meant to define who you are. You are older than your fears, deeper than your thoughts, wider than your wounds, greater than the stories your mind repeats. And perhaps the most powerful truth the Vedas whisper is this: the voice that taught you to fear life was never your true self. It was only a frightened echo trying to survive. But beneath that echo, beneath the fear, beneath the endless noise of the mind, there has always been something untouched, something whole, something free, something infinitely alive. And that presence, that silent witness, that awareness watching these words right now, has been you all along. The greatest act of courage is to stop surviving and begin living again. After everything you have been through, after all the lessons pain forced you to learn, after all the nights you stayed awake carrying burdens no one else could see, after all the times you had to become stronger than you ever wanted to be, there comes a question that quietly waits for you, not at the beginning of your journey, but after the storms, after the heartbreak, after the disappointments, after survival has shaped the way you think, love, trust, and move through the world. The question is this: now what? You learned how to survive. You learned how to protect yourself. You learned how to keep going when giving up seemed easier. You learned how to carry responsibilities. You learned how to hide your pain. You learned how to expect less, so you would hurt less. You learned how to prepare for disappointment before it arrived. You learned how to keep functioning even when your heart was exhausted. But eventually, survival reaches its limit, because survival can teach you how to stay alive. It cannot teach you how to feel alive. And one day, perhaps in a quiet moment when no one else is around, you begin to realize something difficult to admit. You no longer want to merely endure your existence. You want to experience it. You want to wake up without immediately entering battle mode. You want to laugh without guilt. You want to rest without believing you must earn it. You want to trust without rehearsing betrayal. You want to hope without expecting disappointment. You want to love without constantly preparing for loss. You want to stop treating every day as another emergency. You want to live, and strangely enough, living again can feel terrifying, because when survival has been your identity for years, peace feels unfamiliar, joy feels risky, wonder feels childish, softness feels unsafe. You may even ask yourself, who am I if I stop struggling? Who am I if I stop proving my worth? Who am I if I stop carrying everyone? Who am I if I stop preparing for disaster? Who am I without the armor? The answer can feel unsettling, because survival gave you certainty. It gave you roles to play. It told you exactly who to be: the strong one, the responsible one, the independent one, the one who never asks for help, the one who keeps everyone together, the one who always survives. But perhaps you have mistaken survival for identity. Perhaps those roles helped you through difficult seasons, but they were never the whole of who you are. The Vedic sages taught that forgetting and remembering are both part of the human journey. We forget our deeper nature. We identify with fear. We mistake the masks we wear for the self beneath them. And then, slowly, life invites us to remember, not by becoming someone else, but by returning to what was always there. And perhaps this return does not happen in dramatic ways. Perhaps healing is quieter than we imagine. Perhaps living again begins with very small acts of courage. You drink your tea slowly, instead of rushing through it. You watch the sunrise without reaching for your phone. You sit with someone you love and truly listen. You take a walk without trying to be productive. You laugh without immediately waiting for bad news. You say no when your heart needs rest. You say yes to something that excites you. You dance in your kitchen. You return to a hobby you abandoned years ago. You create something imperfect. You allow yourself to enjoy a peaceful moment without apologizing for it. You stop postponing joy. You stop assuming that beauty must be temporary to be meaningful. You stop treating your life like something that will begin later, because later was never promised. This moment is. The Vedas remind us that life itself is sacred. Not only the extraordinary moments, not only spiritual experiences, not only great achievements, but this, the ordinary miracle of being here, breathing, feeling, loving, learning. watching clouds drift across the sky, listening to rain against the window, sharing a meal, holding someone's hand, hearing laughter echo through a room. These moments are not distractions from life. They are life. And perhaps one of the greatest tragedies is how often we miss them while trying to survive a future that has not yet arrived. How many sunsets have you looked at without seeing? How many hugs have you received without fully feeling them? How many conversations have you half heard because your mind was somewhere else? How many beautiful seasons passed while you were waiting for permission to enjoy them? Survival teaches you to look ahead. Living teaches you to arrive. Survival asks, Asig, what if everything falls apart? Living asks, what beauty exists here right now? Survival asks, how do I protect myself? Living asks, how do I participate? Survival says, do not trust. Living says, open your heart anyway. Survival says, stay hidden. Living says, be seen. Survival says, wait until you are ready. Living says, begin exactly where you are. The truth is, you may never feel completely ready. Fear may still visit. Doubt may still whisper. Old wounds may still ache. The mind may still imagine worst-case scenarios. Healing does not mean becoming fearless. Healing means refusing to let fear make every decision for you. It means choosing life while uncertainty still exists. Choosing love while loss remains possible. Choosing wonder while knowing nothing lasts forever. Choosing presence over prediction. Choosing courage over control. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is saying, I know life can hurt me, and I choose to love it anyway. The version of you that survived deserves your gratitude. Honor them. Honor the sleepless nights they endured. Honor the tears they cried in private. Honor the impossible decisions they had to make. Honor the burdens they carried when they had no other choice. They protected you. They fought for you. They kept you alive. Without them, you would not be here. But perhaps they have been standing guard for long enough. Perhaps the war ended years ago. Perhaps the emergency is over. Perhaps the armor that once saved your life has become too heavy to carry. And perhaps it is time to gently place it down, not all at once, not perfectly, but little by little, breath by breath, choice by choice, moment by moment, until one day you notice something extraordinary. You laugh more easily, you rest more deeply, you notice beauty more often. You trust yourself again. You stop rushing through your days. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop measuring your worth through suffering. You stop calling exhaustion a badge of honor. You stop treating survival as your greatest achievement. Because something even more courageous has begun. You are learning how to live. And perhaps this is the deepest truth the Vedas have been whispering all along. You were never born merely to endure existence. You were never meant to spend your entire life proving your strength through suffering. You were never meant to survive your way through every sacred moment this world placed before you. You were born to participate in the mystery of being alive, to stand beneath the night sky and feel awe, to love people while they are here, to grieve them when they are gone, to dream impossible dreams, to begin again after failure, to cry when your heart breaks, to laugh until your stomach hurts, to create, to wonder, to forgive, to heal, to awaken, to live. One day this life will ask you to let it go. None of us know when that day will come. And when you look back, perhaps the question will not be, how much did I survive? Perhaps the question will be, did I allow myself to truly live? Did I notice the beauty? Did I say what mattered? Did I love deeply? Did I show up fully? Did I participate in the miracle of being here? And maybe, beginning today, your answer starts to change. Maybe you stop waiting. Maybe you stop hiding. Maybe you stop postponing your own existence. Maybe you stop asking for permission. Maybe you stop preparing for life and finally begin living it, because the greatest act of courage was never surviving what tried to break you. You have already done that. The greatest act of courage is opening your heart again after everything it has endured. The greatest act of courage is believing that joy is still meant for you. The greatest act of courage is trusting that this ordinary, fragile, breathtaking life is worth showing up for. And the greatest act of courage is choosing again and again to be fully alive, because after all these years of surviving, you deserve more than merely existing. You deserve to live.